Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, about to be joined by Ken Weed from the Winnipeg Free Press. Together we are Kenny and Renny. This is the Kenny and Renny post-game show following another game, kind of like the last one, where they got a point against the Montreal Canadiens. Walk away with the victory here tonight. One of those games where you can be both positive about it and pessimistic about it, optimistic, pessimistic. Probably easier to be more optimistic about this one, I would say. Game against a team that kind of ran them out of the rink the other day. You'll remember after the Nashville game, I'd said about the Buffalo Sabres that it was a team that you kind of never knew what you were going to get out of that team, right? So you never knew they could come out and do what they did to the Jets, like they did on Monday, and then they could come and do what they did on this night here tonight. And I thought that the Buffalo Sabres were a really good example for the folks out there of what the Winnipeg Jets aren't, and one of the reasons why I think Jets fans are able to connect maybe better with their team. Like if you're a Buffalo Sabres fan, you're probably a pretty frustrated hockey fan, right? And the funny part about that is after the Buffalo Sabres won their last game, they were ahead of the Jets in the standings, right? And then they went out and had a poor showing in their next game. Then they lose this one, so they're they're pushed a little bit further down after the Winnipeg Jets got that point against the Montreal Canadiens, and all of a sudden have 5 of their last 8 possible points. So maybe things turning around. But what I saw from this Buffalo Sabres here tonight was a team that carried a lot of the play for the first period of that game and a good chunk of it in the second. They clearly outshot the Jets. I thought they had a lot of high danger chances. I thought the Jets' chances were more high danger. Here's where I think that the Winnipeg Jets win that game. And I talked with Mike Harrington, who is a very, very well-known Buffalo writer who's been writing about the Sabres for years and is one of the most acid-tongued critics out there when it comes to saying it how like it is and how he feels it needs to be said. And clearly in Buffalo, a team that's lost below the playoff line and has been for year after year after year, they need someone who's able to do that. What stood out to me, and you may notice this, it happened by my count on 3 goals, and it happened numerous times over and over and over again in the game. But if you go and you watch the empty net goal that the Jets score, they have the man advantage because they've pulled the goaltender, right? And there's a contested puck in the middle of the neutral zone. And if you take a look, one of the Buffalo Sabres players takes off. By the way, I should just say we're already in the car and driving along on the Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent opening drive. I just basically opened the door, you hopped in, and I've just been yapping about it the whole time here. But you'll see a player goes to change and does so in a ridiculously casual manner and goes and stands beside the bench on the boards. And the player who he's changing out is taking his time, like just not hopping over the bench. And what ends up happening is the man advantage that they have by pulling the goaltender is absolutely gone at that stage. And a player who could have hopped on and helped with that contested puck ends up just coming nowhere near getting on the ice. The Winnipeg Jets, score it to ice that game. That happened by my count on 3 different goals that the Winnipeg Jets scored on this night, including the breakaway goal that Tanner Pearson scores. And I asked Mike Harrington if this is common, and he said they do it all the time. Like guys will, and if you've played hockey before, this is just an absolute cardinal sin. When they change, they just turn their backs to the ice. They slowly skate off. There's no sense of urgency. There's no attempt to try and get, the player that you're switching out onto the ice quicker. And basically what it does when you change like that is it gives you these little mini, basically penalty kills, right? Except the problem with them is they come out of nowhere because you're used to there being 5 guys on the ice. You're expecting it to be. if you go back and you watch that game, how many times did the Buffalo Sabres pass to a guy who just vacated his spot and decided to go off and change, and it ends up being a turnover? It happened over and over again. To me, that's a sign of a team that is just absolutely kind of given up on itself and really doesn't have a lot of care in itself. And the Winnipeg Jets would never do that. I have not seen the Winnipeg Jets do that. Everything that I've seen from the Winnipeg Jets this year, and that, I've been pointing out a lot of different things. One of the things I'll point out here tonight is, yes, the Winnipeg Jets have points in 5 of their last 8 games. They also have 2 of those points over the last place team in the league, 2 of those points over the last place team in the East. They lost to the last place team in the East, and the Montreal Canadiens were on the back end of a back-to-back. I mean, this is the kind of trip that you would hope to get 6-7 points out of 8, rather than 5, but you'll take what you can get right now if you're the Winnipeg Jets. But the Winnipeg Jets issues, as I've seen them, are issues so far, from what I can glean, of personnel and not being able to fulfill the system that they're trying to play. And I thought tonight was probably another example of that, right? Like, the Buffalo Sabres are not a very good team, and yet they carried a lot of the play, outshot the Jets. The Jets were clearly more opportunistic. They clearly capitalized on the mistakes that the Buffalo Sabres made. And that, to me, is the difference in this game. But the making of mistakes that they're capitalizing on were of far too casual in nature. If I was a Buffalo Sabres fan, I'd look at this team and be like, why am I watching if you don't want to try, right? And the Winnipeg Jets have never done that. There's an honesty to the Winnipeg Jets game, and I thought I was going to have to get to this at some point, because I know there's a lot of people, when the Winnipeg Jets are losing games, I'll get messages from people saying, rip them, Renny. And I know I've got, a reputation of being a guy who can be a little bit harsh on the Winnipeg Jets. That was a well-earned reputation for me. That comes from a time where I have always said, and I've believed it, and I remember when it started, and I remember how much I disliked the style of it. But in 2019, the Winnipeg Jets launched into they went from being one of the most suffocating defensive teams in 2018 to full-fledged snake charmer, dishonest style play, easiest offense that they could find, spotting leads to bad teams, racing back in and winning the game at the end and patting themselves on the back for it. The dishonesty part of the game that I saw from the Winnipeg Jets from 2019, basically until Rick Bowness arrived, was something that I just found hard to watch, because I'm not a fan of dishonest hockey. And I thought the Winnipeg Jets were long a dishonest team. What's happening to the Winnipeg Jets right now, and while you'll probably find I wouldn't be ripping them the way that I had in the past, was that I don't see a dishonest team. I just see a team that's challenged to play the style that it's trying to play. They got a little bit closer on it tonight. Does that have anything to do with the team that they played? You're darn right it does. The Buffalo Sabres were a more capable team. They probably win this game, or maybe they don't, because Eric Comrie was brilliant in this game. But I walk away from this game and I say, the Winnipeg Jets did a lot of new things better. I don't personally look at it and think that this is like, there you go, they've switched in, they've locked in, they're building. Was the Montreal game better than the Buffalo game before it? No doubt. Was this game better than that? No doubt. So maybe they are building. I guess I'm going to have to reserve my judgment to see what they do against the Edmonton Oilers, because it was a long time ago. Renny said to you, the Winnipeg Jets game is like this. And when the degree of difficulty goes up, they lose. When the degree of difficulty goes down, they win. The degree of difficulty was down on this night. They walk away. They win this game. It's been since November 1st, over a month ago, that the Winnipeg Jets last beat a team over the playoff line. And I know that the Edmonton Oilers are not that now, but the last 4 games, the last 4 teams that they've played haven't been the highest of quality teams, although the Montreal Canadiens with that win went from below the playoffs up into second place, or I guess they're in third place now in the Atlantic Division. But this is a stretch of time over these last 4 games that the Winnipeg Jets should have used to bank some points and get really going in the right direction. They get 5 of 8, so that's not bad. Starting to see signs maybe, but I need to see more, and I need to see more against better competition, because tonight this to me is as much the Buffalo Sabres shooting themselves in the foot to get into the situation that they were in as it was the Winnipeg Jets playing to their identity and forcing a win against the Buffalo Sabres. That's my take on the whole thing. Going to bring in Ken here right away, but before we do that, I want to give a shout out to the Jim Pattison Toyota and say this December, it's time to Toyota at Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent. Lease the 2025 Tacoma 4x4 SR5 truck from just $116 weekly for 64 months at 6.59% with $7,699 down and a $1,500 accessory credit. But hurry, the offer ends December 31st. Visit Jim Pattison Toyota on Regent for a test drive today. All right, time to bring in the man with the best music in the business. Here comes Kenny, folks. Oh, Ken hopping into the show here. Let's bring him in. We were pressing the button at the same time, but here we figured it out. Looking good there, my man. Still working at the arena, grinding. Good to see you back looking like a Vittorio Rossi man. I'm a casual Vittorio Rossi man today. Didn't decide to put the tie on. I think I can still pull it off. And of course I can, because when you got the foundation laid down by Vittorio Rossi, you can pull anything off. And if you want to have that kind of foundation, all you got to do is head on down to Vittorio Rossi on Corden Ave, and you walk in, loudly proclaim Kenny and Renny sent you, ask for Frankie and the boys, and they will do you up right. Ken, I know that the head coach was a lot happier with the way his team played. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly some pockets that the Jets were not, looking overly sharp, and as you said, Sabres occasionally took it to them, but I think the biggest thing for the Jets is that they minimized the odd man rushes against. I mean, it was nothing near what we saw on the Monday night game when they basically got skated out of the rink. Not a ton of odd man situations, not a ton of extended zone time. Yes, a couple shifts where they got hemmed in, but that didn't lead to anything dangerous, Sean, or at least not as dangerous as we saw the other day when the Jets are basically hanging on for dear life in that game. So again, progression, yes. More attention to detail, yes. But at the same time, I mean, Eric Comrie had to be excellent again, and that's part of the job. I mean, when you're going to be taking over the number one role, it means that he's taking over, that means you're going to have to play that way. So Eric Comrie, very simple, Sean. We talked about it. He stacked another important effort today. That's 63 shots out of 66 he's turned away. That's a .955 save percentage in the last couple of games. And again, it's not always as easy as boiling down the numbers, but Sean, a lot easier to have your team in games when you're giving up 1 or 2 or 0 in terms of, compared to 3 and 4 and whatever else. And yes, the team played better at times in front of them, but Sean, we talked about how his save percentage dipped below 895. I think it's back to 905 with the 2 starts that he stacked here. So, and goals against down to 282, which again, still a little bit high, obviously. But given where they were a week ago, Eric Comrie is rounding back into form. So I think that's a big development for the Jets. And again, I'm not blaming him for all those other games. Obviously, it wasn't only goaltending, but Comrie has been sharper since he was pulled. And yes, we know Scott O'Neill said it was a mercy pull, but Eric Comrie has come back the way that any team would want him to after facing that scenario. Sean, somebody had asked, again, the media sessions were a little bit shorter than normal, but M Dubs 27 says, KNR, any chance we see Comrie play back to back tomorrow night in Edmonton, given how dialed in he is? Sean, to me, I don't see that as an option for the Jets tomorrow, given the fact that they're about to play, finish 3-4 and 12 of 16 on the road. And the bigger thing for me, Sean, is that they're facing the Dallas Stars on Tuesday. I think that it's got to be Thomas Milich's game on Saturday night, and you give Comrie the weekend to recharge and get ready to play Dallas. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that already when you're taking a goaltender who's a backup goaltender, a career backup goaltender, and all of a sudden he's playing starters minutes, you're asking a lot to ask him to be the kind of goaltender that plays back to backs like that. I do think that there's, I think what we've seen the last couple of times when they've started Milic, if they've started Milic in the game that they're more likely to lose. If you, I don't know if you agree with that or not, but what I'm seeing from them is them strategically starting Comrie on the games where they think they have the better chance of winning. So tonight is that game. You would think maybe if you were going to do the back-to-back, you'd put your stronger or your more experienced goaltender against the Edmonton Oilers to try and dig you out of the game on a back-to-back. I think the Jets are in a position right now where if there's points on the board and available, they have to go after them. I'll just say on the point that you were talking about, the idea of Comrie dragging his game back up. I don't think his game was ever down. I think the team around him was playing poorly. I think he's raised his game from where it was. That doesn't mean that I think that it plummeted. I think that he was basically playing the same as he was before. The team was playing poorly around him. They didn't give him much of a chance in that Buffalo game. And the one thing I will say, Ken, when Buffalo kept going to the top corner on him the last game, they tried that again tonight. Right. Talk about a goaltender learning and coming back better. I thought Eric Comrie did a really good job of that. But we're talking about the Winnipeg Jets. It is a very distinct possibility. The way that Montreal Canadiens game played out and the way that this game played out here tonight, to me, it was a distinct possibility that the Jets could have come out of this game and that previous game with 0 points in the last two games rather than 3 points out of 4, if not for Eric Comrie. I thought Eric Comrie, like I said, I thought that game against the Montreal Canadiens was a 6-2 game for the Canadiens. And I thought the game here tonight was one that early on could have got out of hand if he hadn't been playing well. What you're seeing right now for all the people who are talking about Connor Hellebuck's not here, and Connor Hellebuck would have won some of these games for the Winnipeg Jets. That's what you saw in these last two games. Eric Comrie came out and did the things that, he wasn't just sitting there being, I'm a backup goaltender, I'm going to do the best I can. He probably heard the criticism in this town of people being like, well, I don't care that the Winnipeg Jets aren't playing good. If Connor Hellebuck was here, he would have won them a couple of those games. To me, these are Comrie. This was, to a degree, a Comrie win. I'm not sure if I can kind of go all the way there because, like I said, I thought Buffalo was extremely mistake prone and shot themselves in the foot tonight. But I don't know that if Comrie's not having the game that he has, that the Winnipeg Jets this doesn't go to overtime or something like that. But if you were looking to try and say that Eric Comrie is not doing the things that Connor Hellebuck did, if Connor Hellebuck would have been in the net for these last two games, everybody would have been talking about and had the exact same performance as what you saw from Eric Comrie. Everyone would have been talking about Connor Hellebuck dragging this Jets team out of the mud and picking them up and setting them right. He deserves that kind of storyline because that's what he's done here in these last two games, Ken.
Yeah, he's been tremendous. And yeah, I mean, he's just making a few more saves than he was earlier on. And I agree totally. I mean, the environment in front of him was shaky. I mean, there's no other way to put it. Never mind the offensive struggles that they faced. I mean, the bigger issue was the defensive struggles. And yes, there still were, some high danger chances that he faced, but it wasn't as high as the Montreal game. I mean, again, we take this with a grain of salt, but today 9-7 for the Sabres in terms of the high danger chances at 5-on-5. So I think it was 15-14 the other night. So I think that the Jets have reason to be encouraged by the results of the defensive effort. But Sean, I'm with you 100%, and that's not surprising. I mean, we're about to find out in the next 5 games if these strides are for real, right? I mean, this is
gold. Yeah.
Yes. I mean, the value coming up is that it's going to be challenging. Edmonton is within a point of the playoffs or 2 here. So Dallas is almost they're right neck and neck with the Colorado Avalanche team that is threatening the Boston Bruins for the most points of all time. Thursday, the Boston Bruins are this year back to looking like the Boston Bruins, second in the Atlantic today by points, not by points percentage, but by points. I mean, Washington back in first place. Ottawa, technically dipped below the line in terms of points, but points percentage, they're in the playoffs today. So again, I'm not taking anything away from this win either. And like you said, Sean, there's points now and coming at a little higher rate, but they had to come in a higher rate based on where they were coming from. I did see a little bit more urgency. And again, we're going to dig into it in a second here, but the Jets' next 5 games, again, it's not the season, but after getting through a stretch of 12 of 16 on the road, they have home games coming up, but they're also playing some really tough teams. So, we used to talk about measuring stick things all the time, and not every game is going to be one, but the Jets are about to get a big test here in the next 5. That's how I see it.
I just wanted to do this one quickly. I always love it when people agree with me. I love it even more when they build on what I was saying about these being Comrie wins. Joe from Winnipeg says, Money Pucks deserve to win a meter, had Buffalo at 80%. Comrie absolutely stole that game. Another quality start. Hey, this is good for me for the Flame and Comfort hot take of the game. Good stuff here. That, of course, is your KNR hot take, brought to you by Flame and Comfort, Manitoba's premier supplier of fireplaces, wood stoves, inserts, and everything hearth related. After 50 years heating up your world, Flame and Comfort has moved to 1465 St. James Street. And when you get there, you'll find it is one of the most impressive showrooms in Western Canada. You don't need your hot takes to keep that warm feeling inside. Visit Flame and Comfort. They will take care of it for you. And I don't know how the folks at Flame and Comfort feel about this, Ken, but I'm all for giving the Flame and Comfort hot take, the good kind of hot take, to anyone who's willing to compliment Renny, to back up his, all those kind of things. I give out the award.
Sound like you.
I've got the ultimate power. Now we may get, maybe a phone call will come from upstairs from the folks at Flame and Comfort, and they'll put the heat on me, if you know what I'm saying, about abusing that power. But until then, that power shall be abused. Also say this about Comrie. Potential here, Ken. Potential for him with his last 2 starts to have delivered the Pristine Roofing wake-up call. I should probably say maybe even holding on long enough to give the 4th line the Pristine Roofing wake-up call.
Answer.
You know what that means. Time to give North End Rick the Pristine Roofing wake-up call at 204-981-6289. He's the guy you want down at your place for all your roofing, siding, and exterior needs. He's a good guy to talk to too. So you know what? If you just want to get him down and chat in your driveway, if it's not that cold of a day, that'll probably always work. Although you should probably get some work done while you're at it. You can also call Pristine
Rick's busy
at 204-237-7663. Give your home the Pristine Roofing and Siding wake-up call. You will be glad that you did. Yes, let's not waste Rick's time, although I waste it all the time. So I don't know
that again. That doesn't sound like you either.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to the fourth line. Fourth line, let's get to it. And we're going to get back to Taves to the wing later, because we always like to kind of follow the chat when it's going somewhere. And a lot of people are chatting about that in the chat room. So I want to know, we will get to it. But in the meantime, because of the Pristine Roofing wake-up call, let's get to the fourth line and what you saw from them tonight, Ken.
Yeah, I saw them execute with speed. And again, we've been talking about how much they have been struggling, and they got the wake-up call because in their previous game against Montreal, they were scoring chanced 7-1. So in this game, they outscored their opponent 2-0. And Sean, it had been a long time for all of them. Morgan Barron hadn't had a point in 10 games. Tanner Pearson had 1 goal in 20 games. Cole Koepke had 2 assists in 17 games. And this evening, they delivered the game winner and the insurance marker by smart hustle plays. So they definitely played there's no question. This is their best game of the year. Yes, there were moments earlier in the year when Barron scored and was very effective and maybe more noticeable. But in terms of quality, quality offense being delivered and not being, giving up nearly as much as they had been. That was a massive step forward by that fourth line. Sean, I thought Cole Koepke did a great job of forcing Alex Tuch into the turnover and then springing Tanner Pearson for the breakaway. Good job by Pearson to bury it because, Sean, this was a 2-0 essentially. Cole Koepke doing a nice job of shading on the subtle pick of the chaser so that Pearson had a little bit more time. Again, good play all around. And then, Sean, it's something we've been talking about for a long time. Like, things kind of started to go sideways after that game in San Jose when it looked like Cole Koepke had a third of the net open. And instead of shooting immediately, he tried to drag it across and was tripped by Askarov, injured himself on the play. Jets lose the game and then kind of started the spiral. I'm not blaming Cole Koepke. I'm saying that he had to think about that glorious chance for a long time while being sidelined. And then all of a sudden he was back and then he was a healthy scratch. So all to say, Sean, today, Cole Koepke, instead of shooting it right away when he got the pass from Morgan Barron, he had the, patience to freeze the goalie, go to the backhand and beat UPL for his first goal as a Jet. And again, it's not to overstate one single moment, but for a guy who hadn't scored yet, with the season being at the point that it is, getting a goal like that, a pretty goal nonetheless, would have felt good for Cole Koepke again. And I wasn't able to get down to the room like you were because of my writing deadlines for today. But it seemed like he felt pretty relieved from getting it. And it's important. Those guys Sean, we talked about it almost a good chunk of last show, and people were going crazy that we somehow were thinking, well, the fourth line, how can it be the fourth line's fault? And we weren't saying it was their fault. We were saying that it was important for them to contribute because the second and third lines have been scoring, and we'll get into them in a second. But to me, this was a big step forward for that line. But Sean, I'm not saying they have to score 2 goals every game. They have the ability to be impactful far more often than they have been in the first 27 games. And that's something that they need to start stacking games like that where they're using their speed. They had another 2-on-1 late. Barron, had a good chance, right? So that's important. That Scott Arniel can lean on his fourth line and get, 9 to 12 minutes of quality hockey and get the occasional goal. Because, Sean, the secondary scoring had not been there. The Jets' top line, with Kyle Connor's goal, had scored 12 of the previous 15 goals and 12 of 14 when you don't count the Niederreiter empty netter. So they, desperately needed secondary scoring. And the fact it comes from the fourth line, as Scott Arniel pointed out at the podium, that has a huge impact on a game. If your fourth line scores twice, that's got to be guaranteed win night, Sean, unless you're losing, unless they come in an 8-2 game or something. But when the fourth line gets 2, the rest of the guys around them have to deliver. And that's what we saw the Jets do this evening.
Well, it's pressure from the bottom. And
right.
And what you can kind of take a look at here is the Winnipeg Jets have only won, going back to what is
5 of 15.
They've won 2 games since that last win against Columbus a long time ago. And guess what happened in those 2 games? They got they got at least 2 goals from a line outside of the top line, right? And that's the difference. If you take a look at a game like tonight, the difference between this game, I know in the end it's a 4-1, empty net, but the difference in the game when it comes down to it is that the top line is still showing up and doing their thing, but it's the additional scoring that is putting them over the top. So you could see great example of that was the Washington game, right? Like Washington ends up winning that game 4-3. The top line does everything it can to try and drag the Winnipeg Jets into that game, and they end up falling short. But if the second or third or fourth line shows up in that game, maybe it's a tie game. Maybe they win it in overtime. Maybe the second, third, or fourth line scores 2, and then all of a sudden you win that game, right? Like it's the Jets talked about it not last year, but the year before Rick Bowness left, about how good the Winnipeg Jets would be if they actually had a contributing power play. And those are the things that swing games. Well, clearly depth scoring swings games. So you take a look at the win over the Nashville Predators, you take a look at the win over the Buffalo Sabres, and you take a look at the fact that the Montreal Canadiens game went to overtime. Had they had a contribution from the second, third, or fourth line, they probably win that game, right? So the importance of that is huge. The other thing that I thought was important, Ken, you pointed it out on the Pearson goal. It's defensive pressure. It's trapping guys along the blue line, applying pressure, turning that puck over. And where did we see that? We saw that all the time last year. Where did we typically see it?
Neutral
we
zone.
saw it from 3 guys.
And the blue lines.
We saw it from Lowry, Appleton, and Niederreiter. How often did they pressure defense, or sorry, the opposition up high when they were in the offensive zone, trap them along the line, turn over the puck, and then head in for breakaways? Happened all the time last year. It's not happening this year. So if you're the Winnipeg Jets and you're trying to get back to playing a style like you played last year, well, Koepke and Pearson, who were not here last year, did the best impression of the Winnipeg Jets of yesteryear and creating that kind of offense. So they've been 2 of the guys, Ken, that I've been pointing out. The Winnipeg Jets, I don't think, have the personnel to be what they were last year. So they did, and I've said this time and time again, I need to see evidence of the Winnipeg Jets doing the things that they did last year. It doesn't have to be for an entire game, but here and there, and add it a little more for me to believe that they can get back to that. This, Ken, is one of the very first examples this year of the Winnipeg Jets, an element of the Winnipeg Jets playing the style it's been trying to play and having the kind of success they had last year, forcing turnovers that turn into offense. We talked about it earlier in the year. Morgan Barron did it in one of those early games. I think it was against Philadelphia or something like that. But that's the importance of it. It's not just that they scored, it's how they scored. They scored off defensive pressure, turning it into quick offense, and then they scored by churning and getting in for a grinding out offensive shift, finding a guy open. This is what the Winnipeg Jets looked like so often last year. That line did a good job of chunks of this game looking like what the Jets looked like last year, which is impressive because those were 2 players that weren't here last year. I did want to switch quickly to make the point of the top line. I was thinking about this. I had that conversation with Adam Lowry about how he felt like his line has been chasing the game. And it just got me thinking. And one of the things that he'd said, like what we're not doing is we're not doing those grinded out shifts where we pin our opposition in their end and lean on them and lean on them and lean and work and then change and set the table for Scheifele's line, is what he said. It just got me thinking, Ken, this is the best version of the top line that we have ever seen before. Right? Ever. Like you think about all those great years and, when they had Blake Wheeler on that line and all the offensive capability that they had, this is the best version that we've seen of the Jets top line ever. And it actually kind of blows me away, Ken, because they've done it despite not having that huge advantage they had last year of a team where the third line, sometimes the second line, sometimes the fourth line would absolutely set the table, tire out their opposition, pin them in their defensive zone, and change and let Scheifele and Velarde and Connor go out against a bunch of guys who were gassed and end up scoring a goal because they just had the table entirely set for them. It's amazing to me the top line is doing what it's doing this year. Yeah. They are flying solo doing it, and it is just it because of that, people may not see how high above last year their level has risen. It really is something. They upped their game. This is a massive level up. This is like the Mario getting the mushroom, or maybe even the flower or something like that, because they have just gone all powerful and they've really done it kind of on their own, which is impressive.
Yeah, so through 27 games, just for some context, Sean, and the reason why Scott O'Neill has chosen not to break them up break them up to this point. They've outscored their opponent 26-17 this year in 27 games at 5-on-5. There's also a couple goals where Connor and Scheifele were on and Velarde was not on the shift or had changed. So they've been good for basically a goal per game. Now, yes, there are some nights where they get outscored, but more often than not, they've been outscoring their opponent. And that doesn't take into consideration power play or anything like that. So, yeah, I mean, I get it. I mean, and then like you said, like what they're doing is even more impressive because they're doing the bulk of the work offensively, right? We know that zone time is down. The opportunities are down. They're not generating nearly as much. And for all the reasons that you mentioned, because there haven't been as many handoff shifts or churning shifts by other lines, they're generating almost all the offense. Now, yes, sometimes that's with the benefit of Pionk and Sandberg or Morrissey and DeMello, but they're doing the dirty work. So that's been important. It's not just off the rush because, Sean, what we talked about earlier, there aren't as many neutral zone turnovers being created by the Jets. So that limits the odd man rushes that the top line has been getting. So yeah, Mo, it's incredibly impressive what they're doing. And again, some people didn't like it previously when the Scheifele line got thrown out for empty net opportunities, but it's deserved. Like, those cookies are there because they're not just playing a one-way hockey game. That's why they're out there. I mean, it's been impressive. And again, and that number was almost 27-17, but Scheifele's skate was over by a toenail. So, I mean, that would have been another goal. Again, maybe they don't get the empty netter, fine. But the fact that they generated another, impressive play for another goal that was taken off the board by a smart challenge by Lindy Ruff, but that doesn't diminish the fact that it was created and delivered by that line again. They've been great. I mean, this is why it hasn't been as easy as just saying, break them up automatically. It makes it happen. I mean, and again, Scott Arniel has been a lot more open than, sometimes other coaches had been. And when it comes to the consideration, but again, the reason why, and he kept having belief in his other lines. And today, one of those other lines delivered offensively. Now they need more of that more often, but this is part of the reasoning. This is part of the reasoning, and it makes sense to me.
Yeah. The reason is they score and they score and they score and they score. And you know what? You can score a great rate with Cambrian Credit Union. Getting a mortgage doesn't have to throw you off your game. While you focus on home sweet home, our friends at Team Cambrian Credit Union take care of the mortgage part with their low rates. Whether you're looking for a new home, renewing, or making the switch, Cambrian is your mortgage MVP. They can help make the next season of your mortgage path easier and help save you money. Now that's what we call a win. Head to cambrian.mb.ca/rates for more. And Ken, why don't you give Sweet Lou a shout out while you're at it?
You bet. For folks who have realty needs you'd like to have met, contact our main man, Lou Ferlin at Royal LePage Dynamic Realty, 204-791-9971, or at the office, 204-989-5000. His email is lou@louferlin.ca. That's LOU@LOUFURLAN.ca. Lou Ferlin, excellent realtor, excellent human being, and excellent supporter of the community, including our podcast.
Okay, you talked about Scott Arniel needing more from lines outside of the top line. One that definitely needs more from is his second line. There's always been a little bit of a debate. Is the Lowry line the second line? Is the JT line the second line? Well, they took that out of the debate by fusing those two together. The debate afterwards was who was actually the center on that line. Mike McIntyre had thought that it was Jonathan Taves. Props to Christian O'Mell. And I had thought this as well, but he'd brought it up that he was seeing online. People kept talking about Lowry on the wing. And he'd said, I don't think that Lowry's on the wing. I think Lowry's the center here. What did you think about the explanation by Scott Arniel of why he moved Jonathan Taves to the wing? And what do you think that's going to do for his game if they continue? And it sounds like it will.
I'd like to see more of those guys together. And I mean, again, Taves took some offensive zone draws. So that's why you thought that maybe he was the center, but in the D zone, Lowry was there a little bit more often for sure. But also the other part of what we know is that it's not just as simple as, down low is automatically Lowry, like based on who gets back first, like they play it as a kind of a rotate F3 becomes the center at certain points. So again, the reasoning is simple. it's a taxing system. And for Taves, playing on the wing means his responsibilities are the point man or the slot. So rather than having to handle some of the heavy down low coverage, that could provide some benefits to free him up offensively. I mean, we've talked about the speed and the skating and some of those things. So if you're not having to exert as much energy defensively as a winger rather than being the center, you should conceivably be able to get up ice a little bit quicker and create a little bit more offense. Because Sean, one thing that we know is that when the puck is on the stick in the offensive zone, the creativity and the vision and the passing has often still been there. But the trouble has been getting out of the defensive zone. You've referenced it often. They've had far too many extended zone time defensive shifts. And this way, maybe when you have, Adam Lowry's the best defensive forward on the Jets. So if you're putting Taves with him, that will obviously, it doesn't diminish his responsibility, but it takes away some of the stuff that's on his plate. So potentially that could open up some offense. And again, I mean, Cole Perfetti's got to be on that line. He's got to be the driver. I mean, in terms of driving, creating shots and, helping, obviously his vision and passing will help the others also, but Taves can be the setup man, but Cole's still the trigger man on that line with the new configuration. So those three all have to get going together. And, maybe this new unit, we saw some positives with Lowry and Perfetti, for various points when Lowry and Taves were flipped, as you referenced. But all three of them kind of need to get themselves going offensively a little bit more. And I liked some of the things that I saw from them for sure. But again, it wasn't a massive shooting gallery for them. One shot for Lowry, Taves had none, and Perfetti had 1 and 2 attempts. So again, they need to get going a little bit more. And Sean, we've talked about this often in the first 30 games this year, 27. Nemesnikov and Niederreiter, there have been times where those two have some chemistry together, and Alex Iafallo has meshed with either one of them at separate times, not always often playing together. But again, I think there's some potential there. But Sean, this is very simple. Fourth line's not going to get 2 every night. No. And the second and third lines can't get 0 as often as they have been. I mean, in that 7 or 8 game block, there's been one game that the second line has scored. Yes, they got 2. The third line got 2, and one of them was an empty netter. But still, like that's not enough from the middle 6. But again, it's not always going to be measured by goals. Some of it can be offensive zone time, momentum created, but the Jets still need more no matter who's on those lines. That's the simplest way to boil it down.
Now, it's interesting because there's things moved around, and Scott Arneal says that he likes what he's seeing. It's probably a little bit easier to say that when the fourth line, when you get some depth scoring, but the fourth line isn't really anything new. Here's my thoughts. Fourth line is just basically, those are the fourth line guys. They've been jumbling guys in and out. I don't know at the beginning of the year that the Winnipeg Jets thought that Nyquist was going to be part of that jumble, but here they find it. At least on a night like tonight where they're moving guys in and out of the lineup, there's some people on that fourth line that I talked about last show are looking to grasp the brass ring, right? Like, it's about time that happens. If you don't want to be in and out of the lineup, make it so that you can't be taken out of the lineup. So I saw 2 players that took a step towards doing that. So that's a positive in that situation. I got to say this, Ken, watching that third line when they put them together, I had a conversation and I asked you earlier in the season if you saw, because the Winnipeg Jets were the oldest team, I'd asked if you saw any signs of potential regression. Maybe I didn't ask you if you saw signs, but I said, do you think there's a danger of regression?
Sure,
and I wonder, looking at this, the way that the season is going, if we're seeing regression in the games of Nemesnikov and Niederreiter. I thought putting them together, I don't know that third line is a sustainable third line. It to me would have to be a line that was basically a zero-sum line. We're not going to score on you, but we're going to make sure you don't score on us. I don't like the odds of that being a line that comes out on top in the plus-minus thing or the goal differential. Right. The move, what I like about the second line is the moving the Jonathan Taves to wing, taking some responsibility off of his plate, seeing where that takes his game, because it's a place that they haven't really gone before this. I think the thing I like about it most, though, Ken, is an admission that this isn't going the way that they thought it was going to go with Jonathan Taves. And before this, I remember when he kind of got moved down, it looked like he was getting moved to the fourth line. And basically it was, right up to the second line after things didn't work out. What I've seen is, and let's make no mistake about it, Jonathan Taves is a future Hall of Famer. He's a living legend. But he's not playing like a legend right now. He's not even close to it. He's far off of it. But what I've seen is a team that and a coaching staff that has provided every opportunity over and over and over and over and over again for Jonathan Taves to pop out and show out. And that hasn't been happening. And the team's been losing and having, what is it now? Is it 1 point in his last 14 games, 15 games? What are we at now, Ken?
No, I think it's 11, but still a high number.
Well, I think it's higher than that.
Well, he had an assist against Nashville. I mean, it's.
Oh, sorry.
I'll double check. But
yeah. So then, so it'll be 2. Sorry, I'm off. Regardless, it's not like we're talking numbers that are like, okay, well, that makes everything all better. No. I think what we're seeing now is if the Winnipeg Jets coaching staff can get to a point where they're not like, okay, well, it's not working with this player, so let's move this player off and then move this player up and see if it gets Jonathan Taves going. To me, at some point, it has to be about the team first, and I think no one would understand that better than Jonathan Taves. Now, his job is to fight for himself and be like, listen, I don't think I should be pulled off. I think you give me a lot of more opportunities. I'm going to, pop out, and then I'm going to start becoming what you thought I was going to be. You don't succeed in the NHL if you don't think like that. So he has to think that way. It's the coach's job. Like I said in years past, when we had the debate about how many games should Connor Hellebuck play, it's the coach in the end. It's his job to say, I know you want to play every game, Connor, but you're not going to. We need to do this, and this is the plan that we're going with. This, to me, is a sign of the Winnipeg Jets coaching staff being a little bit, now they didn't move him off the second line, but it's a coaching staff that's being a little bit more willing to say, you know what, John? It's not going the way we thought it was. We're going to try something different with you. We think you should move to the wing. We think we're going to put Adam Lowry up here, and maybe we're going to find something here. It's an out loud admission that they need, that the patience cannot be never ending in this situation. There has to be a sense of urgency at some point to fix this problem. It's not about getting Jonathan Taves going. It's about getting the Winnipeg Jets going. And I saw from the coaching staff tonight, a coaching staff that made the full on statement that this is time we really got to do what we got to do to get the Winnipeg Jets going. So it's going to be get the Jets going first, get Jonathan Taves going second. And I think that that's the right call personally.
Sure. No. And Sean, it's one assist in 11 games now for Taves. And the problem is that, Nemestikov has 1 assist in 15 games. So it's not as simple as saying there's an obvious successor or a guy that you could put in that spot automatically makes that line better. That person hasn't stepped forward yet either. So,
and they tried that. They tried to put Cole Perfetti back with Nemestikov in the middle when they switched those lines up. And at that time, the explanation was they really liked what they had from Vladislav Nemestikov last year. So they were moving him to center to try and get the puck on his stick more often. So he had more opportunities to affect the game. And a guy who's typically over his time with the Winnipeg Jets always been able to capitalize on his opportunities wasn't able to. The point there being, the Jets very quickly moved off of it when it wasn't working there, whereas they've sat on the Taves thing for almost a third of a season now. I think it's a good thing to see where they're going with that, and it just opens up more. People talk about not using the opportunity to break up the top line to try and spur things, trying different ways around Jonathan Taves, I think, is something that they have really not tried and started trying tonight. And I think it at least gives them a different kind of chance to figure things out here.
You bet, for sure. And then just quickly wrapping the bow on what you mentioned earlier. I mean, the flip side of that is that, yes, there's been some regression with those other guys. But Sean, the other part of the issue for a team that has had very limited secondary scoring, Nemesnikov and Niederreiter have combined for 12 goals, even though there haven't been nearly as many lately from those guys, right? So they're trying to, it's like
you're rubbing the firewood together and hoping that, there's a flame eventually. So
I guess my take, and it's something that I haven't said about this, is those early season points. Okay, I wanted to say this shows ago, and I forgot to say it, but how I always talked about the Winnipeg Jets being a team that comes out at the top of their game compared to everybody else, and they bank a lot of points. Now, I didn't think that was the case this year, Ken, because what I was expecting was a Winnipeg Jets team that looked like last year, and they didn't. Even though they went 9-3, they didn't look like that. But the question becomes, how much of that hot start, that 9-3 start, and the starts by those players that you're talking about, Ken, is that the Winnipeg Jets were actually at the top of their game? Even though it didn't look like what it had looked like, and even though they were telling us the whole time, we still haven't played a full 60 and we haven't got to our blueprint. Well, we've seen they've never got to their blueprint since. Maybe that was the Winnipeg Jets at the top of their game, like we've seen year after year after year. And what we're seeing in the slowdown in so many players is that the Winnipeg Jets started here and gave themselves a little bit of a head start in their first 12 games, and the rest of the league has just done this. Because as I've said, November 1st, that's the last time the Jets beat a team above the playoff line. It's been over a month since that happened. Tonight is just another example of them beating the lower teams. We need to start seeing examples of them beating the upper teams to think for a second that this team has a chance of kind of going anywhere. Before 100%. We do go anywhere else, and we're going to go to Cole Perfetti, I wanted to make this a Sean's headband version of the Kenny and Renny show, because it's kind of like my thinking cap, Ken. Without it, I don't.
You should have put it on earlier then.
Yeah, there you go. There it is. Okay. Well.
You walked right into that one. Sorry.
I'm not going to go back in time.
Don't lead with your chin.
Exactly. I do that so much in life. Okay, here we go. Tell you this, I would have had a comeback for that if I would have had the thinking cap on. Hey, I'll tell you something. You'll keep coming back to Myers if you head down there, because they've got everything you need when it comes to your prescription needs, your health food needs, supplemental needs. And of course, if you want to give them a try, you just have to pick up the phone and call on down there, because they deliver anywhere citywide. So give them a chance, and that you'll keep coming back. Like Renny was unable to come back to that good burn by Ken there. Okay.
It's Cole so Perfetti. Unlike me. That's why it's so unlike me.
Yeah. You keep those thoughts simmering below the surface. You think them, they just don't bubble out very often. Cole Perfetti. I'll just get into this. Yes. There's a lot of people in here who seem really not happy with where Cole Perfetti's game is. You see over and over again the Seth Jarvis comments. That's gonna, as long as he's in Winnipeg, that's going to follow him the rest of his career, considering Seth Jarvis is a Winnipeg player. I don't know what you're seeing from him right now, Ken. What made him a really good player last year, and I think I had this description. Sorry, I was talking with a buddy of mine from my beer league hockey team, and the line I'd said, which he said he'd just said to his wife on the couch, was Cole Perfetti took a big step forward last season, and it seems like he's taken just as big a step backwards this season. And what I would say is him taking that step forward was a step into the fray. We talked about it and we covered it over and over again, how he got to the net front, he got dirty, went to those areas. And before that, what I'd seen was a Cole Perfetti who kind of tried to control the game from the outside, which I'm sure he was brilliant at doing at the OHL level. There's a certain amount of superstar NHL players who are able to control the game from a distance. Josh Morrissey is one of them who continues to do it. But for the most part, that disappears in the playoffs. So I'm not the biggest fan of those games anyway. But Cole Perfetti, I just don't think he's able to do it at the NHL level. So he went and he got dirty last year. I'm not seeing any of that, Ken. And I'm not seeing, so what it seems to me when I say he took a step backwards is Cole Perfetti would, in games where they were against lower echelon opponents, remember that Sharks game where he went off last year, when they played a struggling opponent, he was able to pick them apart from distance, because when the degree of difficulty went down, he could play that kind of game that he'd played at the junior level. He abandoned that game, I think rightfully so, and then got dirty, did all the kind of things that we suggested he should do, got right to the front of the net. That's where he pulls off the Manitoba Miracle, a spot that I don't think he spent a lot of time in before that. But that seems to have gone by the wayside. I don't see that from him so far this year. But what I also don't see is him, kind of keeping his numbers buoyed to a degree, because in those low degree of difficulty games, he would be picking teams apart from the outside. He abandoned that game. It looks like he's not going back to it. I'm not advocating that he should, but there was this kind of Cole Perfetti, which he needed to evolve from. He evolved, and as he evolved, he let that game slip away. And now it seems like with this game gone, he doesn't have either game. Like, he, to me, for the most part, outside of he's had some Johnston Group got you covered plays of the game, he's probably still a better defensive player now than he has been in years past. And I remember for a while last year that was good enough for the head coach. He said about Cole Perfetti, hey, he's doing the right things, he's playing the system, all that kind of stuff. So I think there's still an element of him doing that. But for the most part, Cole Perfetti looks entirely lost to me, Ken. I don't see what his game's supposed to be, what his identity is supposed to be. It's like he's just not there.
Yeah, he's struggling. There's no doubt about it. He knows it. He's frustrated by the way that things have been going. There's no doubt. And again, this is not to take him off the hook, because he's the first guy to know that he needs to be better. I just think this is the worst possible high ankle sprain for a guy that needs all the speed that he had built over the summer, Sean, even if it's to get you an extra, not just maintaining, but maybe you get a quarter step or whatever the number is in the speed in the game that is getting faster and faster. Cole couldn't afford a 6 to 8 week setback the way that he had. His preseason, he was looking sharp, moving well, and he doesn't have his legs back, and that's preventing him from getting to some of those areas. Last year, Sean, you talked about it. He's got such a good stick. He was able to be disruptive on the boards. Like, we talk about Gabe Vilardi winning board battles all the time. He's obviously a bigger guy than Perfetti, but Perfetti was using body positioning and his smarts. But right now, he's not able to win as many off one-on-one battles.
Right.
Not being able to get from A to B. And
Great point.
A to B also means getting to the high slot. Cole is exceptional, Sean, at finding quiet ice. But right now, the timing has just not been there. The chemistry is not there. And again, I wanted to put a bit of a moratorium on the Ehlers stuff. But Sean, you've talked about Ehlers and the impact he's had on the overall game. Nobody was impacted more by Ehlers' speed than Perfetti.
Yeah.
Ehlers' ability to push guys back, even when it was east-west, that created second wave opportunities for Perfetti all day long, and those aren't there right now. So I'm not taking him off the hook. I'm just trying to supply some context for what has been different for him. And again, not being at full health is a massive deal. And again, this is not an injury that goes away a week later. So it's not going to be easy probably till for the next couple months, but he's got to fight through it. That's the deal with Cole. He's going to keep giving you effort. But it's just, his inability to get to some of the spots as last year, I think is one of the biggest impacts on why his game has turned south a little bit, or not just a little bit. I mean, he's not been as impactful, not close.
Yeah, to a couple points that you made there. One, Nikolai Ehlers created a wake boat sized wake for people to surf in behind him, and Cole Perfetti definitely got that. But the one kind of counter I'd make, Ken, is and you need your ability to move around on the ice. I'm not countering that. But that said, Cole Perfetti's game has never been about speed. The other part about it is, one of the things that really impressed me was his board work and his board battles last year, Ken, and they seem non-existent to me this year. Like, there were so many times during games that I saw him get into it with a guy that was way bigger than him, and somehow he'd come away with the puck. He seemed to be finding his smarts in the kind of tough, dirty areas, and it just seems like he's overwhelmed. And one of the things I wonder about this season for him is with if a player who is never that fast to begin with, but knew how to play off speed, and I don't just mean Nikolai Ehlers, I mean the entire team around him. The Winnipeg Jets was a faster team last year. It may be one of those things where I talked on the last show about how I think Dylan Sandberg with the system getting creaky and not as good as it was last year, it creates bigger areas to defend, and he's getting caught in the middle. So I take a look, and I've said, of the people who've really been, kind of affected by or who showed out based on the Jet system last year, I thought at the top of that list was Connor Hellebuck. Then I thought Sandberg was there. It's becoming more and more apparent to me that a team that is lacking the speed that it has last year, that's not boding well for Cole Perfetti, a guy that you said is a smart player who knows how to kind of live in the areas created by the speed around him. Without that speed being around him, he does not look like he's moving that much, and he's definitely not creating anywhere near the opportunities he did last year. Okay, Ken, time for the Johnston Group Got You Covered play of the game. What do you got?
Yeah, I marked something and sent you a note. Neil Pionk breaking up a 2-on-1 rush. It was in the second period here, so I don't remember which Sabres were coming down, but it was just an important defensive play. And Pionk had a strong game, set the tempo, set the tone with a hit on the first shift, and just getting back to a little bit more stable and less chaotic game overall. But I thought that play specifically in the second period was what I'm going to highlight for him in a game that was solid.
I'll take it. And hey, do you run a small business in Canada? Look to Canada's #1 employee benefits plan, Chambers Plan, to give you a competitive edge. Chambers Plan is the simple, stable, smart choice for over 30,000 businesses countrywide. Visit chamberplan.ca to learn more. And that brings us to our hashtag the keg save of the game. What do you got, Ken?
Oof, man, there's tons in this game that were interesting. Marked a few of them. I thought there were some subtle saves. But I think that sequence with Zucker in the third, I'm going to go with those. I mean, there were two for sure, and maybe even a third. I liked Comrie's ability to. You talked about how he played the top of the net or top third better. I liked how he moved his feet also in the game. I thought he did a bunch of kick saves, and the one on Zucker there was what I'm gonna pick overall. Even though there are a lot of options.
Are you talking about that one on the side of the net?
Yes.
I think they had the net post, and he got the glove in the spot there. That was mine as well. I thought that was an extremely, extremely important save. There was also a shoulder save to the point of, and it came from the point. I'm trying to remember who took that shot. I thought maybe it was
Darlene or Byram. Left side, right?
Yeah. Well, yes.
Darlene, I thought.
Which, regardless, it was towards the end of the second period, and it's a labeled for the top corner, and he got the raised shoulder, and it was just enough to redirect it out of play. And I thought that was a recognition of put it this way. Think of Connor Hellebuck in the playoffs last season and how the St. Louis Blues kept going over and over and over again to his glove side, and they kept beating him over and over and over again. It says something if what I'm seeing tonight is correct, Ken, that a player who got beat up top walked in against a team that he'd played recently, knows how they beat them, and used that information to get better and to correct something that was not working in the last game for him. So a little bit of a cerebral turnaround for Eric Comrie, and a couple of different examples of the hashtag keg save of the game. Doesn't matter what we think, though, matters what you think. Share with us your hashtag the keg save of the game. You're automatically entered to win a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg, each location finer than the last. And our winner from our last show is Mike Thiessen. Mike, you know what to do. Direct message me at SN Sean Reynolds. Send me your full name. Send me your email. I will have the fine folks at the keg send you a $50 gift certificate usable at any of the 3 fine keg locations here in the city of Winnipeg. And as you know, each of those locations is finer than the last. Ken, anything to say before we go?
No, it'll be an interesting one. Quick turnaround for the Jets, also for you and I. So we'll be covering it from home tomorrow evening, and we'll try to break down a fun Saturday night hockey night in Canada special.
Sounds good. Looking good. Okay, that's it for us. Before we go, if you do appreciate the conversations happening in this space, I would implore you to appreciate our sponsors who fight to keep the conversation going in this space for us. That's Jim Pattison Toyota on Region, Vittorio Rossi, Cambrian Credit Union, Pristine Roofing, Sweet Lou Furlan, Flame and Comfort, Myers Drugs, the Kenny and Renny OGs and the Johnson Group, and of course the Keg. Thank you to them. Thank you to all of you. Let's turn it around and do it all over again tomorrow night. Bye-bye.